Well, welcome to the Followup podcast. My name is Hayden. I am the worship director here at Arbor Church, and today I'm joined by Alison, our community care pastor. You crack yourself up every time with that. Amanda Salisbury, our youth of... What do you want your title to be, Amanda? Youth volunteer extraordinaire?
Whatever.
Okay.
All things.
We'll put whatever.
Right hand man.
Or third.
All things.
All things.
Students, kids.
Yeah. You do so many things. And Bryan Cobley, our students director and our speaker from Sunday. And Bryan, you got to wrap up the family. You pointed for a long time, man. You committed
but I was also
to
doing
that.
a double jointed thing that I can do.
Oh, yeah. You got to wrap up our family values series.
Yeah.
And your topic was serve sacrificially. For everyone who hasn't listened to the podcast or seen online, family values is all about our acronym, LEGS, living invitationally, engage consistently, grow spiritually, give generously. And Bryan, you had serve sacrificially.
Yes, sir.
So Bryan, how long had you known about that you were going to be preaching on serve sacrificially, or just any of the family value topics?
Well, we know 2 months before when we had lunch as a staff. And then
It feels with COVID time like everything is like longer so like last year didn't we talk about this?
But we had lunch as a staff, and that's when Cliff was like, "Hey, did anyone speak to you guys?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, serve sacrificially would be really cool if I did that." When was that?
Great.
That was a long time ago.
I don't know.
Yeah. So you've known
But
for a
long
little bit.
enough.
Yeah.
Long enough.
enough.
I have no clue.
I had some time to think about it, so if it was bad, sorry.
No, it was good. When you were told serve sacrificially, were you excited? Were you like, I'd actually like a different week? Or were you like,
So, I mean, I picked it, so I was excited, but I honestly had no idea what I was going to do because, as you know, Hayden, from being just close friends with me, topical sermons are like really difficult to write sermons for. So just the topic of serving was like, okay, like, how do you, for me, it's how do you say that for 30 minutes of what I can say in 5?
Yeah.
And so trying to flush out a whole 30-minute sermon. While when I do expository sermons, it's, okay, how do I narrow this down to 30 minutes? While topical is like, I'm just putting a lot of varies and a lots like in your paper when you're trying to hit the word count.
Yeah. Allison does not approve of that at
You
all.
not approve? Who you? Come on, you did that right? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, Bryan. When did you come across or have the idea to spend the majority of your time in 1 Peter?
So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know that I was going to do a word study on the word serve.
Okay.
And see all the different times serve comes up and the different ways it comes up.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to focus on the different words. It's actually kind of cool. One of the things I discovered was the word serve, there's different Greek words for it. And there's 3 major words that it's used most of the time, and they're used as like service. So like when you're serving someone. But then the majority of the time, there's a different word for when people serve God, and there's a different word when people are serving each other.
Ooh, that was cool.
Yeah. So there was.
Wait, so what are I don't remember that in your sermon.
I didn't say that in the sermon.
Oh, well, tell us about that. That's really interesting.
I don't remember the words, but it is for when you see like a specific word for serving God, it's a completely different Greek word.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to follow up.
I need more on
that.
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow up on the
If I'm correct, I
follow-up.
think it's like Latera, like Datera, but not.
Like the oil?
Latera.
Latera sounds like a medicine. Or, you know.
It does.
God
sort
is
of
our
a-
medicine.
Oh.
He's our healer.
That was good.
While you're at it, God, my back.
Yeah, Bryan, this was like your Jordan flu game, man. You were preaching a big sermon in the middle of like a medical emergency.
Yeah,
Your
this
back
is
was out.
I'm better than Russell. I went back up.
Oh, wow, Bryan. You're not going to make a lot of friends on this podcast.
How you doing, Amanda?
We still beat you, though, so
I mean,
it
he wasn't
happened
hurt
after.
at that point.
But you know
He got
what?
hurt against the
Just-
Rams.
just take your 49ers
And get out of
put
here?
them back in your pocket.
Okay.
So, Bryan,
Yes, sir.
why did you decide, this isn't a critique, I'm just asking the question, just to preface, okay? It's not a, Why did you do that? Why did you decide to open up with the as seen on TV? Let's call it section with your message. What was the driving force?
So
for that?
the thought is, I knew after doing the word study on serve, that's when I really found the First Peter verse, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is completely like what we at Arbor would say is serve sacrificially. Like we all have been given gifts, specific gifts, and we need to use these gifts to serve others, because that's really what the gift is for. It's for a specific purpose, and that's the purpose of spreading the gospel, and hopefully people accept the big gift, which is grace. And so I was thinking of specific gifts, and if you know me, I love gifts that have a purpose.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to give me a gift, it's just I would love for it to be a practical gift. That's something I could use. Don't really care about wearing stuff all that much, but just a random
Well,
thing. And I'm
weren't you saying specifically your mother-in-law gave you something
she's so-
jank that you use all the time?
all the
now?
time. That my
what was it?
Steak flipper.
The steak flipper.
The steak
right.
flipper, yeah. So it's, grilling before this tool was I'd grab a fork, flip it, or my tongs or my spatula and flip my steak. It was fine. But when I opened up my stocking, I'm like, what is this sharp object? And she goes, it's called the steak flipper. I'm like, yes, please. And now I will not grill a steak or any meat without my steak flipper. It's a little small hook, and you hook it, you lift it, turn it, and then unhook it.
I feel like I need a practical demonstration of this.
I just did. Did you see?
No, like in real life.
Oh, you need to come. Oh,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I need to make you a steak.
Yeah.
Come over. I make a steak.
Allison too. And one for Hayden.
Right. Prove
Hayden,
it.
have you seen my steak
Prove
flipper?
it. Prove it.
I don't think so.
It is the greatest tool. So that I was thinking of my mother-in-law, who gives the greatest practical gifts, and just to get on the mindset of gifts for a purpose. When you think of the as seen on TV gifts, you're like, there's that viral video of that guy who looks at these like gifts or these items, and he like makes fun of them because you can do that with something else. But I'm like, no, those specific gifts outside of the ice cream, like the DIY make your own ice cream makers that everybody has on top of their fridge because they bought it once, used it once, and have never used it again. Outside of that gift, all those other ones are so nice to have. Sorry if I attacked anybody with that statement.
I don't have an ice cream
In
maker.
today's culture, I'm sure we'll get enough hate mail about that. Yeah, all the people with the DIY ice cream, all of a sudden caused a schism in our
Nobody's
church.
going to make you ice cream now because they know you.
Hayden, growing up, did your parents have the make your own ice cream?
Yeah, it was like the little like crank style. Like it looked like a little, I don't know. It looked like a I don't know how else to describe it, but like the little popcorn things at the movie theater, like that size. Yeah. And then you just cranked it.
How often did you guys use it?
Twice to my memory.
And was it left on the fridge after that?
No, it was actually, they put it out in the garage. I remember it was like you washed it out of like cobwebs and everything when you actually used it those 2 times that we used it. So,
but I was excited to just share the practical gifts and give out gifts to people, the gifts with a purpose. And it's funny because a lot of people were super excited for it. It was like, like that's the point of practical gifts. It's not something you'd usually buy yourself, but you are so thankful that you have them.
It's interesting to think of the church like Jesus and, handing out gifts, knowing that somebody was going to be the steak flipper in the church, right? In the body. And that this particular way that they, do the flip is so integral to a home or a household or a family. And so that's the purpose, right? You were saying that these gifts are to be used for, did you use the word edification of the church?
I did not use that word, but yes, totally. I said that.
You meant it.
yeah.
But
In my
how
mind.
did you say it?
I said that the gifts are used to serve each other because that's what it says in 1 Peter 4:9-11.
That's cool.
Yeah. I was going to say something as you were saying that.
Well,
but I was saying the main thought process was it's cool because, we call them gifts, we read them gifts, but it's really not a gift for us.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of it. It is a gift to be used for others. We're just the instrument to get the gifts out to the world.
yeah.
To serve.
And then the not immediately next, but one of the next parts of your sermon was you went through and read the 15 tips for when you have someone coming over to your house.
Yeah.
What inspired that decision, Brian?
The
'Cause
make
you committed and read all 15.
I did.
I thought like, oh, he's going to read a couple. You read all 15.
All
and I was
15.
like, all right.
They were important to know.
Again, not judging or not critical, right?
No.
How you-
Hey, I really didn't like when you played the D minor today. It didn't hit. It didn't hit in the song.
I did not play a D minor.
Okay.
We didn't play anything in C, so nice try.
So that came from the tagline that we spent like 2 hours as a staff to come up with.
Which we use. Yeah.
Have yet to really even mention.
Yeah.
Which-
Well, it's on the slide, but we never
We've never
mentioned
talked
it. Yeah.
about it. And so
yourself at home.
I was listening to Alison's sermon, and I looked at that. I'm like, nobody has mentioned
I
make
know.
yourself at home.
I know.
Like once we mentioned where the story came from with the volunteer who like grabbed food on the podcast, but I'm like, make yourself at home. I'm gonna talk about that. And then as I was looking at the make yourself at home, I realized there is a lot of work, which is why I read all 15 to show that there is a lot of work when you say that statement, make yourself at home. And in the context of serving, there's a lot of work to get done just to put on a service for people to come and feel like they're at home.
Yeah.
Have what Alison likes to say, that she ripped a church home.
Well, I think my favorite part of that list and that whole section of your message was that you read those things and you said, nobody knows how much work goes into the moment in time where you say like, hey, come on in, make yourself at home. Because like we just hosted an event at our house a couple days ago, and the whole first half of the day was spent getting ready for the people to come, and then they come, and then the whole rest of the day is spent like cleaning up after they've come.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it is a lot like church. It is a lot like a Sunday morning. There's so many moving parts that go into setting up chairs and having worship and having a parking team and like everything.
And not just a Sunday. Sunday alone is huge. We have people showing up to this building almost every day of the week.
Right.
And there's work to get done.
Right.
So people can come and grow closer to Christ.
Right.
And we need help.
We do. And it in a way is very humbling to use that word need. But I think it's honest, and I think it's transparent, because we are a little short staff here. Can't caulk every hole that's in the wall and then like repaint over it. And we can't, there's just a lot of work to be done that we can't do just ourselves.
Yep.
And
or the volunteer who does many. Like I look at with Amanda, Amanda, how many teams have you helped? Like, I wouldn't say like committed, but how many teams have you just helped at this church since joining Arbor?
I don't know.
well, it's kind of countless because she morphs,
Yes.
you know, around.
Into like everything.
Right. So like making popcorn out in the backyard during our summer thing. And, you know, I don't know. She does everything.
Now, what's that? And Amanda's like the example of that statement that we used to say, the 20 does 80. Is that what it was?
Oh.
The
20%
20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's Amanda. I mean, Amanda, we hope, does not get burnt out one day.
Well, we hope to clone her.
Yeah.
I would like a clone of myself.
And
so
that's your
if you
job.
figure that out, let me know.
It's good to have somebody coming up behind you. So that is something that's good. Like bring somebody along with to do all the jobs and then just to hand it off.
That's the idea with Amanda.
Yeah. Yeah. And she should be doing to others.
Yeah, Amanda is my right-hand person.
Be a mentor.
Right now. That's when you said, what's your title? I said, right hand. Right-hand man. Amanda.
Woman.
You know, man in the ESV context.
Oh,
where
please.
Get out of here.
I did that on purpose.
I know you're trying to
So
stick it in and flip me.
Last week, Alison spoke on giving, and we talked about how challenging of a subject that can be because it's uncomfortable and it can make people get a little, you know, they feel like they're on the hot seat the whole time, right? I looked out during the message and noticed a few people who were like, oh, a little bit like that. And I thought to myself, I wonder if there is also some guilt as well when you're sitting there and you're hearing Bryan speak about, here's how we could use your help. Everybody's pitching in. I don't think you mentioned on stage the 20% is doing 80%. But I then thought about, wow, that is actually, this message could be a call to action or a very much, man, I'm not doing a good job serving here. Was that something that you anticipated? Any sort of people feeling called out, or maybe not called out, but like, maybe I should be doing a little bit more here.
Which is why I added a little bit in the message where I'm saying, if you are serving, because that's one thing I didn't really address, so I had to address it, was other people would be like, I am. Like Amanda, do you not see what I'm doing? Like, I am. So I did have to address, if you're doing it, awesome. But if you're not, like, this sermon is for you. Mm-hmm. And the people who are serving was the little thing I added at the end where I talked about the different ministries and the impact that they're having. Mm-hmm. But the uncomfortability, like, I do think giving sermons are uncomfortable to hear. Yeah. I think the serving messages are uncomfortable to do. Yeah. I've always felt that, and there was a story that I couldn't add into the sermon that is so applicable. And I told myself one day, like, I need to share this story with a church because it is so true. And it was at my home church when I was volunteering in the kids ministry and I was an intern, that we always have a Sunday called like Serve Sunday, where we talk about all the different children's programs. And this church is huge, so there's so many children's rooms that need leaders. And so during the announcement section, the family pastor went up, who was my youth pastor growing up, and just did an amazing job of talking about the need for joining the kids team. And I'm like, this is awesome. We are going to get so many people and so many new people, because a lot of times you just keep having the same people over and over again that just really need a break, and we can't give them a break because nobody's volunteering. Yeah. So I was super excited because he did such a good job. And at the end he goes, and if you guys want to sign up, we have a booth out in the parking lot for you to come and ask questions. And I was going to be in the booth. Right after the youth pastor went, our worship guy came up and started talking about
sponsoring a kid.
Yeah, sponsoring a kid. What's the organization?
Compassion?
Yeah, Compassion International. And was showing videos and stuff, and was like really hitting at people's heart of like, you can like one time give and sponsor a child. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh no. And at the end of service, and the person said, if you want to give, there's a booth, there's a tent out in the parking lot. And at the end of the service, I'm standing in the booth, and not a joke, not a single person came to the booth, but you looked over at the Compassion International, and there was a huge line of people. Yeah. And I was like, not to be rude, they had, pictures of the kids, and I think Compassion International is a wonderful ministry, but I'm like, do I need to take a picture of your kids and like put them on the tent to talk about how important this is? Brutal. But it was like so telling to me, like, wow, people would much rather just do a one-time like tithe or one-time like financial donation and just not commit their time, not tithe their time. So to me, I think the giving sermons are super uncomfortable to hear, because sometimes you feel like, oh man, I gotta spend this. But the serving one is, I feel like you can listen to it, but also know like, I'm just not going to listen to this one. Yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting about our verbiage too is the word sacrificially, because tagged on, like when I hear that, I think a lot of people are exempting themselves, like, oh, I don't really like working with kids, or I have kids at home already, and I'm burnt out and don't want to like also do kids at church, or like everybody's exempting. And I think they'd be willing to serve in a space where it didn't cost them much, right? Like they may ask, like, what could I do that, like, I don't have to wake up early for it? Like, it's not going to be too hard. It's going to fit my, schedule really nicely, or my skills or gifts. And then that word sacrificially comes in, and it denotes some sort of like giving up of yourself. It's not just going to come super easily. So
that's the part in verse 9 and I didn't really hit on the sacrificial part in the message, which I totally should have. But if you fit it in with the message, that's the part of show hospitality without grumbling.
Without grumbling.
Without grumbling.
Yeah, the attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I had talked earlier in the week, and I had pointed outside to the parking team, and in my head I'm thinking none of those guys are equipped or like gifted to lift cones and set up signs and point in the rain.
Yeah.
Like that's not actually a spiritual gift or anything like that, but they do it because there's a need and they serve sacrificially.
And have come up with just a great brotherhood of those people. On that
Yeah,
school.
they've
They
got.
always look like they're having fun out there.
They
they're
are
having
having
the
fun out there.
In the rain, in the sun.
Like I look at them in the window, like, oh, can I hang out with you guys?
Yeah.
Then Allison's like, hey, did you turn the coffee on yet? Like, oh, I'm sorry. I'll go crush those cans.
Wow. I don't see this side of Allison that you see. This is interesting.
Also, it just started sounding like Winnie the Pooh. Did you guys hear that?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Well,
Cracking the whip.
Well, I think the tough part is how do you communicate on stage the like symbiotic relationship of volunteering, right? Because you don't lead with the benefit and say volunteer because it's gonna make your life so much better. But that's the truth of it, right? Like
It is the truth.
It's gonna take some work and it's gonna take some sacrifice, but it's also very much life giving. And I think everyone's heard that message and they're like, yeah, is it really though? Is it really life giving?
Amanda, again, is a wonderful example because when Amanda started attending Arbor, she knew CJ and Pete and just a great family. But then as Amanda started attending more and helping out more, Amanda has become such a vital person in our community and within even the student ministry. She is the reason that everybody is family. We talk about how close the student ministry team is. She was a person who made that happen, was the glue to just bring everybody together.
There's actually a story in there.
So
when I first started coming to Arbor, I came from I had a really bad past church experience and it took me a long time to get back into church. And so once I started helping out, I started helping out with kids because I'm a preschool teacher. It's like second nature to me. And so I'm like, sure, I can help out with kids. That's easy. It's my day job, right? And then I also have a degree in youth ministry. And when Bryan found out, he was like, I'm just going to be cool and wait for you to come to me. And, and then at the same time, he's like, I have so many volunteers right now that I don't really need your help at the moment. So anyways, and so then the time came and he was like,
it was when we were a fat baby.
yeah. And then COVID happened and he was like, hey, are you still interested? And I was like, sure. And it was during the summer and I showed up and I have a big past with youth ministry. It's like my job, like preschool, where I do that every day. I have a big past with it. But there was something about showing up at Arbor students and I felt so under-equipped, so alone. And I just felt like a fish out of water. And I honestly, I don't even know if I've told you this story.
This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Okay.
I got to watch my reaction.
I wanted to quit.
What?
Before the summer. And I remember I was just and it was just everything. I wanted to quit. And I remember okay, God, I'm giving it 2 more weeks. And then I'm going to tell Bryan that I can't do this. It's not working for me. I feel like I'm not a part of the team. I feel like I'm this odd person out. And it was around the same time when Arbor sent out an email about how you feel connected at Arbor. Do you remember that? About how we can better serve you. It was during COVID and there was right?
Allison, you put that email together.
Yeah, it was a
puts
survey
all emails
survey that you
And then
sent
I black out and I never remember.
and it was how can we better serve you?
Oh,
Are
the
you
survey.
involved? Yeah,
Survey.
the survey.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And so I'm filling out this survey and I'm I feel like I know nobody. I have nothing. The only people tying me here are Pete and CJ. And I just felt so defeated when I was filling it out. And then over the course of filling out that survey, it makes it sound like it's a really long test. But during that survey, I had a mental shift. And it was you are involved in youth and you're involved, or students, and you're involved with kids and you feel disconnected. What's your problem? And it was, I'm involved in these things, but I wasn't giving myself to them. I was working on autopilot. And once I just shifted that, it's when I started to become friends with Lincoln and do more stuff with Audra and Bryan. And it turned into family. It turned into family. And it was, I had to get over me holding myself back and just, let God use these gifts. And then I started bonding with the students and I remember at the end of summer going into the school year, when those 6th grade girls found out that I was going to be their leader, they were so excited. And it made me feel excited. And now it's just turned into home.
That's awesome.
Well, I love that it was the Holy Spirit that it worked at the same time as that survey, and that you were soft enough to the Spirit to let it minister to you and like do a little work with you. Because imagine if you came up with a different answer, like, forget it, I can't believe I've been with this church for this long, forget it,
the church's fault.
And then walked out. I mean, what God has had for you here and for us to be in relationship with you, all of that would have been lost if you had just not been soft to the Spirit.
Jeez.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm saying, oh my gosh, because those 2 weeks, I'm so glad the Holy Spirit and God interceded, because our youth ministry would be completely different,
right,
if that didn't happen.
Right.
Like,
well, and us personally as friends, we would lose too.
Yeah.
So
wow. Like, man, thank you, Lord.
Well, one of the things I also want to talk about when it comes to serving sacrificially, right? And someone already mentioned the word earlier in the podcast, but the word burnout, right? Where we see a lot of people who were really devoted, volunteering all the time, and then they use the word burnout, which is totally legitimate. I'm not trying to say anything wrong with that. But as someone who worked for a church, then stopped working for a church and attended church, it took me so long to then volunteer at a church. And I don't know if we want to, talk about this and maybe try and put a finger on it, but it's something, at least for me, that I saw. I know how good volunteering is at a church and serving and the importance of it. But when you get out of practice of doing it, you're like, am I ready? Is my burnout taken care of? I don't know if you guys have experienced that as well, of, you served for a long time. I know Bryan and I, we served together at Eagle for a long time, and you went straight to your ministry position after that, right?
Yeah. So I didn't have that working then back to serving. So I think I was talking to Alison about this, that Amanda and we have another volunteer in our ministry named Nathan, who both came.
He's the really loud laughing one on Sundays.
On the Sunday. If you ever hear his laugh, it's so great. That's how you know you made a funny joke.
Or not, though. He always laughs at the randomest times.
And then it kind of distracts you.
Yeah. Well, it kind of builds me up, though. I'm like, I am actually super funny. So.
You had a funny moment today when you hosted, Alison.
I did.
Oh, yeah, you and I laughed.
We laughed really hard at it.
What was that?
If you have lunch on Wednesdays.
Yeah, if you have
if you eat lunch on Wednesdays,
you can be in this group.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Hayden and I just died.
I was like, I do that. I do eat lunch on Wednesdays.
And then we laughed, and then it was just a wave of laughter that came after him, and I just...
Thanks, guys. It's all about me right now.
It was good.
Getting going.
But anyways, talking about Amanda and Nathan, to me, they're like an anomaly to me, where two people who worked for a church in just unhealthy situation just felt like they needed out, and then just comes straight to a church and starts volunteering.
Yeah.
For me, I think I would have huge pride getting in my way of, like, if I worked youth ministry and something happened and I went to another church, I would have a hard time jumping right back into
well, and it's
ministry.
Completely counter. It's the opposite advice that most people in ministry give you, is when you leave ministry, rehabilitate and just attend church for a while. So, which is awesome that you and Nathan hopped into that. But like that's where I was at when I was out of ministry. I just attended church and didn't volunteer because mainly that's what I was told to do, and I appreciated it.
I think there's an inertia that happens though if you don't. My counsel to people when they step back out of serving for a while is to like set a clock and and stick to it. That you would, in 3 months, 6 months, 9, whatever, that you would commit to jumping back in. Because the problem is when people just have an open end date of like, I'm just doing self-care. And really what they're doing is just being a little lazy. Ultimately, at the end, like at the beginning, it might start intentional, but then it kind of drifts into inertia, which we're all prone to, and then you never jump back in. It seems like a bigger commitment than to make the leap in time. But if you set a clock and you're like, okay, this is a good half year, I'm just going to receive, and then I'm going to get back into serving. And it doesn't have to be in the same old way that burned you out.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're burned out from the kids ministry, then join the parking team or vice versa, or try out for worship or, you know, whatever.
I mean, and talking about gifts again, because I do know if that ever happened to me and I went to another church, there would be a time where I'm like, man, God has given me so many gifts that I'd feel horrible not using them for the kingdom. So I do know eventually I'd be like, I gotta jump in somewhere and help out, because I have these gifts for his kingdom. I need to use them.
Well, it reminds me of like Catherine Klein, right? Like Catherine Klein, when she came here, she had worked at a church previously and volunteered with bookkeeping. Is that correct?
Actually, the very first thing she volunteered with was food bank, and this was COVID.
Yeah.
She only could work alone, so I stuck her in the sorting room, and she sorted canned goods all by herself for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And then we had a change in leadership here with a lot of tasks that needed to be done. The biggest, scariest one for me was finances and bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And so I was so discouraged walking out of a team meeting one time, and I wandered over to the food bank where she was working by herself. And I was like, she was like, how can I help? And I was like, you don't happen to be a bookkeeper, do you? And she goes, I organized books for a nonprofit for 27 years or whatever. I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
So anyhow, she's been doing our bills ever since.
And then we had a team meeting.
Yeah.
Where Hayden was talking about how he really needed some more worship people.
Specifically
needed bass.
Yeah.
And Catherine, doing the bookkeeping, came. Was she on the phone?
No, Michael was on the phone.
Michael's
Michael's
on the phone.
phone.
Catherine came because she was handing us new cards, which has been like horrible because we can't use them at Costco. But we got new cards.
Yeah.
And then Michael just out of nowhere asked, hey, you wouldn't happen to play bass, would you? And then Catherine's like, actually, I learned bass from the last church because they needed it. And we're like, wait, what?
Here she is on bass.
Yeah.
So now she plays bass keys.
Yeah.
Does our bookkeeping. She's out for all of our jobs. If we need,
I'm a little worried.
She might have a youth,
which is a little
degree.
Comforting.
Yeah.
I know we have a fallback now.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I haven't asked her, but she probably has done youth ministry.
Yeah.
Probably created one. It's probably thriving.
Yeah. But I think it reminds me
I'm gonna
of
text her right now.
Yeah. It reminds me of not only as staff members do we need to personally ask people, but also when you are ready, like make it abundantly clear to us as well. Like I would love to serve. Where can I serve at? Or someone like Catherine, who she's musically talented, but because I remember that story a little differently. She was saying she saw that we didn't have a bass player, so she learned bass because she already played piano. So,
for Arbor?
That's how I had heard it as well. She watched us online and noticed we didn't have a bass player, so she taught herself that.
I took that story as it was her last church that didn't have a bass player, so she learned it.
It's us.
Yeah, it's us.
It's us.
So,
but I love that she
we need your gift.
Yeah.
But I love that she even started small. Like she was not going to say, I'm a musician, I'm in finance, and I'm too important to sort canned beans. It was like, no, just she wanted to serve wherever there was a need.
And if you guys remember, part of that story too is she was struggling with telling Hayden that she had these gifts that she was praying to God for the conversation to open up. And then here Michael just, you wouldn't happen to play bass, would you?
Those stories are what pumps me up, because it's like God has a plan for Arbor and he keeps doing these things. And I just think, okay, we're here for a reason. I love it. I love that.
And within my own ministry, if it weren't for Amanda and it weren't for Nathan, our ministry, like, it couldn't thrive the way it's thriving right now. They have taken so much responsibility off of my plate so I can help Arbor with the stuff happening right now. So our teams and the people who have just been serving sacrificially have helped us through this last year and a half of just tough ministry. Yeah.
And it's incredibly important. It's like something that you do for eternal significance. It's so important. I can't even describe.
And I like the gifting that she has in speaking, Nathan as well. But I'll tell you, the ultimate gift that Nathan has is so funny. He is a children's director at heart. Every game that we ever play, no matter how lame the game is we play in student ministry, he is having a blast. And I really got to ask him one day, are you actually having fun?
Oh, he totally is.
Or are you like, are you just making
generating
this,
it?
Are you making this fun?
Yeah.
Because wow, Bryan needs help. Let me have fun. But every game that we play, I look at him like, it's not that fun, but thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, and it's contagious too.
It is,
right?
yeah. And
So
the
great.
guys around him are then having a blast. And there's a lot of guys around him
And he
that
sits,
don't play games.
He sits
usually.
in with the students, which you know is like it's a teacher thing. Like you know, if you're trying to correct behavior, I always tell you, you know, proximity first before you like, you know, or positive reinforcement.
Right.
And but so he's always sitting in with the students, like sitting with his small group.
Yeah.
Like
That's awesome.
he's always
That's
right there in
relational
there.
ministry too.
Yep, and getting them super engaged with the game.
Yeah.
We played a game last week where if your number came up that you were like that you had up in your hand, you were eliminated. And if you got eliminated, one of our leaders came with the Nerf gun to shoot you. And every time the number popped up and it wasn't his, he'd be like, I was like, are you really scared, or are you like really pumping up this game right now?
Both.
Like the guy who laughs, that pumps up your jokes.
Yeah.
It's like, am I actually funny? Or are you like, okay, Bryan needs help?
Yeah.
That's a good. That's a good.
That was good, Nathan.
That's a good, Nathan.
Well, we need to wrap this thing
Oh,
up.
we totally need to wrap this
Oh
up.
my gosh.
But
so much fun.
and this is a podcast, not a sermon. But in case anyone has heard some of the stories that we shared and talking about serving, what would be the best way for them if they want to serve after listening to this podcast? What would be the best way for them to get connected to a team, Alison or Bryan or Amanda?
Honestly, talk to the staff member that you become incredibly close with at this time,
or even vaguely familiar with.
or and if not, you can email either Alison or I, which is our names.
Alison at arborchurch.com or Bryan at
Or info at.
or info. You can email basically any at arborchurch.com.
Go to the staff page on our website and just click one of us.
DM on
Instagram,
Insta,
Facebook,
like,
Send
Snail
a pigeon.
mail us
If
a
you got a
letter.
pigeon,
Send a pigeon.
Send a pigeon.
Smoke
Yeah.
signals work too.
Yeah. Okay.
Check the weather
Or
though.
a phone call.
Or a phone call. All right. Well, anything else before we close it out?
This was a great series. I
Yeah.
hope everybody feels like they know what defines an arborite.
Yeah.
It's
Now
good to
get ready
reflect.
for 40 days of prayer.
40 plus.
40 plus, man.
40 plus days of prayer.
40 plus days of prayer. Like 40 the cross?
Sure.
All right.
You should be in charge of marketing. Well, thank you guys so much for listening or watching the Follow-Up podcast, and we will see you guys next week.